Well, I'll tell you one big takeaway I had from the match. I'm never doing math again, and I'm never ever going to drink Italian sparkling mineral water ever again! The magic of video editing.
French tornado in the hot sun. I fought Nadal, but Nadal won. I fought Nadal, but Nadal won. 6 chances, thought I'd at least get one. I fought Nadal, but Nadal won. I played so well against Stanverman, I thought I'd have a chance. 7 Lubeck gave me a great game plan, but I fought Nadal and Nadal won. I fought Nadal and Nadal won.
Today on the show, 3 things Rafa did to adapt to the circumstances, to adapt to his opponent, and win in 3 straight sets. Followed by my public apology for doing my very worst job at previewing a match I've probably ever done since I started Coffee Break Tennis. Let me make sure I don't have headset hair, and we'll get started right away. Welcome to Coffee Break Tennis. I am your host, Matt Bradshaw, the most delusional Fed fan in the world, maybe, but still devoted to tennis and still devoted to producing a great tennis talk show. Some say the greatest tennis talk show in the world. So first, let's talk the facts, and then I'll tell you a couple of my opinions, and we will get out of there pretty fast. I feel like a disgraced politician who has my prepared statement here, and all of the shame that goes with reading a prepared statement. Number 1, Rafa stood his ground. He refused to give an inch. We present Exhibit A. Put it on the screen. Rafa refused to surrender his court positioning. Take a look at the ball. This is the closer ball to the baseline. That is the average rally hit point for Rafa when he is playing with the wind at his back. He smothered the baseline, and for those first 2 sets, Roger did a very good job not backing down as well, but it was just too much for him to handle at times because Rafa was playing very well, very aggressive. And the other ball is when Rafa was against the wind, he would back up just a little, not too much. We didn't see him as far back as we have throughout the clay court season. Every loss that Rafa has had, whether it be Monte Carlo, Barcelona, or Madrid, Rafa has suffered from many drop shots. We even saw David Goffin do it in that set that David Goffin won here, the one set that Rafa has dropped at the French Open in 2019. Even David Goffin was able to take advantage when Rafa was way back. Rafa was never that far back in this match against Roger, really at any point. I was really wrong on conditions because it obviously did not bother Rafa. It's not even that Federer was bothered. Like Novak clearly had the stink face on throughout his match. He was bothered by the wind. Roger just not able to hit the shots that he wanted to go for, maybe less conservative targets, more risky targets. Roger lost the confidence to go for those targets as frequently as he had throughout the tournament, but he still played a very respectable match. He even said in his press conference that he played well. The only time he would have been able to maybe hit through Rafa or hurt Rafa more without creating incredible angles. You know, if you hit a great drop shot or you put balls on the line, you can start moving Rafa around enough to hurt him. But another way you could hurt him is just to overwhelm him with pace and then back him up and then maybe hit a drop shot or something like that. That never happened. The only time it could have been possible was when Roger had the wind at his back, and that's why Rafa backed up just enough to make sure he was never forced to hit a ball where he wasn't comfortable. Rafa was pretty much always in his comfort zone, and he's worked himself very well into shape here as far as his ground strokes, his serving as well. Both players took a little bit off their serves, a little bit of power off their serves. Roger, more than he would have liked to. Rafa, no problem. He thought maybe Roger will break me, but I know I will break him many, many more times. A great example of how this court positioning where Rafa refused to give an inch really hurt Roger, despite Roger stepping in and doing everything he could to give Rafa all he could handle. After Roger breaks back in the first set, serving 2-3 advantage. Remember, he saves, I think, 5 break points in this game, which is quite an effort from Roger. You got to give him credit. He didn't put on the stink face and say, I don't like this, it's too windy. He really gave it everything he had. And when he got advantage in that game, he goes for a drop shot right at the spot that I was saying he might try to target in the last video. That backhand, short in the court drop shot. Obviously, short in the court is a drop shot. And Rafa was practically on top of the baseline, maybe a couple steps, a step and a half behind the baseline, and he had no problem getting up to that drop shot. Pretty much every time we saw Roger try to drop Rafa, it worked a couple of times. It did not work more often. This was the only match where Roger, I can't remember put the stats on the screen. You can see it for yourself. I want to say Roger was 45% on his points at the net. Part of that is Roger not hitting as good of a shot as he wanted to before he went to net, probably because he was panicking a little bit because it was so hard for him to create anything to work with. And another part of that, probably a bigger part, was just Rafa was all over him. He was trying to smother him from the beginning to the end. Number 2, Rafa went with the old game plan. In the past few years where Roger has beat Rafa 4 times in a row, we have noticed that Rafa has served not as heavily to the Roger backhand as like what we always saw at the French Open every time they played. Now that they're back at the French Open for the first time since 2011, look at the numbers. We present to you Exhibit B. Rafa served literally like everything to the Roger backhand. And why not? This was smart because it allowed Rafa, even though he took power off the serve, he took a little pace off the first serve, but look what he said. Again, put the stats back on the screen. I think Rafa got, was it 83% first serves in? It was a very high number, whereas Roger's number was much lower. And this allowed Rafa, even if it was less pace, if he could put the serve on Roger's backhand, Rafa would always start from a position of strength. This would always allow Rafa to start from a position of strength to start in the rally patterns that he likes. Of course, we know it's forehand going to Roger backhand. And in these conditions, one thing I can't stand, this is an opinion, not part of the factual stuff. Well, it's a fact for most people. Djokovic and the way he was behaving in the first set against Dominic Thiem, like, it kind of made me, the first thing I thought was like, this is kind of like something you'd see from Serena maybe. But Novak made it pretty obvious to everyone who was watching TV or there that he wasn't happy with the conditions, and it almost felt like he was expecting the tournament to stop play so that he wouldn't have to deal with the conditions. But one thing I can't stand is anyone who steps on a tennis court and doesn't just accept that it's equal. There's a reason why they switch sides every couple of games. There's a reason why you play one game in the beginning. There's a reason why you play only one serve point at the start of a tiebreak. Everything is perfectly calculated in tennis so that you share equal time on the side of the court that's harder to play in. Both players are dealing with the same stuff. Both of these players accepted the conditions and did the best they could, and Rafa really trusted his game, his physicality, his ability to bring so much pace and action on the ball. He aimed for conservative targets most of the time, as long as Roger was hitting a backhand or Roger was moving around and having to hustle up. Rafa was happy, and credit Rafa, because when he had an opportunity to go for a smaller target that would put Roger away in a point or at least really hurt him, then he went for it. He executed almost perfectly throughout the entire match. Roger said it himself in the press conference that he was shocked how good Rafa was playing. He said it was a funny thing he said, I don't know who I could have found to practice with to try to replicate this guy. It's just ridiculous. He said he was kind of laughing to himself at how crazy that is. And full credit to Rafa, who deserves all the praise in the world for his performance here. I tell you what, I'll never bet against Rafa at the French Open ever again. And finally, number 3, it's not really a thing Rafa did. It's the conditions. I will say both of these players probably knew deep down, and this is where I really screwed up as a tennis analyst, whatever I am here at the Coffee Break Tennis Show, a tennis-themed entertainer. I don't know. But the one thing I got wrong was the conditions. I'm thinking stuff like, oh, Roger, 2005 U.S. Open. So much wind, but he still gives us a beautiful performance, plays incredibly. But really, against Rafa on clay, especially with slower, colder weather, Yes, it helped Roger that the ball was lower. And here, put this Exhibit C, put this on the screen. Look at the bounce. Yes, Roger had a lower ball to work with, but thankfully, the Tennis Channel commentators let us know that compared to all those matches that Roger's won, the 4 matches in the last 5 years, of course, we're not counting the forfeit at Indian Wells earlier this year, if you average the height of the Rafa ball that Roger deals with in the rallies in all of those matches, today at the French Open, even though the conditions brought the height down, it was still 4 inches higher. So that's 2/3 of half a foot. About a half a foot higher. It still made things a little harder on Roger. But you know what? No excuse there, because overall, that was a good thing. Roger would be happy with that. But now that I look back on it, I think Roger would have happily traded weather like 2011. Make it hot, make the ball fly. Sure, it takes a lot of physicality from Roger, a lot of extra footwork and hustling around to deal with the high ball. But if it wasn't so windy and the ball was moving faster, Roger probably would have been able to hit more shots that hurt Rafa and get more first serves in that really hurt Rafa. And you know what? Again, I have to credit Roger for being very brave. If you watch the first few games, Roger says, you know what? It's windy. The ball's moving slow, but screw it. I'm sure he thought of the ball's lower, so I got a better chance to hit it the way I want to in that regard. And he went for the aggressive shots. He went for the smaller spots, the more, hit on the line, hit the corner. He went for shots that were going to hurt Rafa more, and he made a lot of errors. And he obviously, you saw it, all of his speeds came down. His second serve, I think he was serving average second serves at 77 miles per hour at, I can't remember at what point of the match. At some point of the match, they flashed that graphic up. I can't remember exactly when, but I think it showed his average at 77 miles per hour. That's extremely slow for Roger on a second serve. He just tried to keep the ball in and give himself a chance until he could get at least more comfortable with the conditions and maybe start going for more. He really tried all the stuff you would have asked him to do. I'm sure he followed the game plan. He did the best he could. But between the conditions that both of those players knew deep down that it was probably going to hurt Roger more than it would hurt Rafa, especially once they started playing in it and saw how it was unfolding. Despite all of that, Roger did his best to deal with it, and Rafa was just too much. He was really incredible. He played one of his best matches of the year. And one of the first things I thought, do I have any more stuff to talk about here? All right, we got a couple more things to get to, and then we'll be wrapping up. I'm doing my best to bring a good show today, but I got to tell you, I'm just too attached to Roger Federer to do a good job with this match, because I wanted it so bad, and I know a lot of Federer fans feel just like me. We wanted it so bad that we let ourselves get delusional and started thinking that Roger would beat Rafa on clay at almost 38 years of age. And there was good reasons. There were some good reasons to think maybe things could be different. But if one of those things you're relying on, and I didn't even mention this in the last video, but it was a thing that I was thinking about a lot, is, you know what, Rafa's older now. How is he going to run around that court and come up with all the amazing shots like he did in 2011? In 2011, Roger threw a lot at Rafa. He threw a lot at Rafa to handle, and Rafa was incredible in 2011 to counter all of that and come out on top and win in 4 sets. At that point, yesterday I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, how could Rafa, all these years later, keep coming up with that stuff? Because it's a more physical game. The physicality, a word I've used too much already in this video. It's a more demanding way to play on the body, whereas Roger, what he's trying to do, yeah, it's going to be tough against Rafa on clay. Obviously, that's pretty physical as well. But it just felt like as you get older, the game plan for Roger is going to be something that's more realistic to execute rather than what Rafa does. But you know what? He freaking did it, and he looked as good as ever. Full credit to the King of Clay. You saw the thumbnail. I pay my respects. All hail the King of Clay. So finally, I just want to say that I don't regret a lot of the stuff I said, because obviously if you watch the match, you'll see Roger try a lot of the things that I said he probably would try, that the team was thinking of as a way to exploit weaknesses with Rafa. So I don't regret that, but I do feel like I did people who watch the show a disservice by creating false hope. Even though I really did believe Roger would win, I feared, deep down, I was very fearful, which I did not show in the last video, but I let myself get fooled, and I believed in the destiny. I felt like this is the way I felt the night before Roger beat Rafa in 2017 Australian Open final. If I feel like that now, surely that's what's going to happen. I let myself believe in Santa. I said it's like going to sleep before Christmas, going to sleep before a big Fedal matchup. I literally believed that Santa Claus was going to come and give us all a Roger Federer victory. But you know what? It's not the end of the world, and I don't think Roger is going to take it as hard as he would have in the past or as hard as the Federer fans have felt. I've seen people out there tweet or comment that, well, great, all that confidence Roger was building for Wimbledon is now gone. I don't think so. I think this will hurt Roger for sure, but by the time he gets on the grass, let's say he goes to Halle, or Halle as he likes to say, let's say he wins in Halle, he's going to go to Wimbledon feeling pretty good about his game. And the biggest reason why he came to the French Open, he just wanted to be match tough. Even he said in the presser he exceeded his own expectations here. It was impressed with how well he played. Put the man on grass, put a Wimbledon roof over his head to keep the conditions a lot cleaner. Obviously, Roger's the greatest indoor court player. I even knew that in the last video. I knew, Roger doesn't like wind, but I thought of all the times over the years I've seen Roger play great in the wind. And again, the wind was worse than any of us would have thought. I don't know the speed, but the wind gusts had to have gone far higher than the 17, 18, 19 miles an hour we thought. And hilariously enough, by the time Joker got out there, it looked like he was in the middle of a tornado. The first point of the match, he bounces the ball like 30 times. On a lighter note, I wrote down a couple things I thought were funny. Last things, and we'll get out of here. My favorite moment of the match is, I gambled. I went to bed very late, and I thought, you know what? There's going to be rain. They're going to start 2 hours late. So I woke up, and it was already a third set, and I was I felt sick. I felt physically sick when I saw the 2 sets down score line. And I'm watching Roger, and then all of a sudden I hear this very weird sound. Take a listen. That is some kind of French wind warning siren. I don't know what it is. Maybe they're saying, a tornado could form. Be ready. I have no idea what it was. But I was so angry, I wanted to yell out
in the tiebreak, and of course,
and part of me was hoping that Roger would yell that out again, but this time not at Djokovic's obnoxious box, but instead at the stupid weather sirens. But hey, if you felt like Roger didn't really care, he sure did, because he did show this sign of frustration. Take a look at this, and please enjoy a nice chuckle. I know it's probably kind of scary for those people, but you gotta admit, it's pretty funny, especially the guy whose hat comes flying off his head. I probably would have done the same thing. I am Peter Tennis Freeman from Crunch Time Coaching always says I'm basically Kramer from Seinfeld, because if something like that happens, I'm pretty frequently jumping like that. I overreact. Anyways, thank you for watching Coffee Break Tennis. Hit the music. We're getting out of here. I hope you'll forgive me for doing such a bad preview on the last match. I still believe Roger can win Wimbledon. I've been saying will win Wimbledon. This hurts my confidence for a little. Let's wait and see Roger actually get on some grass. And if you want to know what I think is going to happen tomorrow, I still believe Dominic Thiem will beat Djokovic. But whoever comes out, it really sucks that these guys are playing multiple days in a row. Rafa plays Tuesday, has Wednesday, Thursday off, plays Friday in a match that probably wasn't too hard on him, despite Federer putting in a good effort. I don't see how in the world Joker or Thiem stands any chance against Rafa on Sunday. See ya.